Magic Mike Show, where you hear the experts speak. The Magic Mike Show. Tune into the show every week. The Magic Mike Show. You can trust the show is the bomb because it's being brought to you by RacingDudes.com.
What's up, everybody? I'm Magic.
And I'm Mike.
And this is the Magic Mike Show, episode 431. Mr. Somich.
Way too early Kentucky Derby prep talk. Let's go.
It's been a great day. It was a very frustrating weekend, and not even for me from a Derby prep standpoint. We'll talk about that in a minute. If you caught the Magic Mike Show, I'm so mad about this. If you caught the Magic Mike Show last Thursday, Mike and I were all over that card. We were completely against Major Dude in the Dania Beach Stakes. That was the correct move. We both tried beating Papa Cap in whatever that allowance race was. That was the right move. Cairo Consort, you correctly singled, and then when my other horse scratched, that became my single. That was the right move. How in 2023 are you letting in a turf route at Gulfstream in a stakes just one horse go out on an easy lead? All that speed signed on. What are you doing? So mad at we lost that opening leg, and otherwise we destroyed the rest of that pick five, buddy.
That was the crazy part about that race too, is that you mentioned like all the speed signed on. It was long shot speed. Generally, if there's speed that's going to 100% go, it's long shot speed, right? Because that's the speed that has one chance of winning. You're not as a 40-1 shot who's only one gate to wire. You're not winning coming from 5 back on that Gulfstream Park turf course right now. So it makes no logical sense why you don't send a couple of those bigger prices. They don't go. The one just gets the dream trip on the rail. It gets to go 24 and change, 48 and change, no real pressure, and just kicks clear going home. I mean, just absolutely destroys that field. A little frustrated with Congruent, who is one of the stable up horses where, again, not the best trip in the world. I don't think wins with a better trip, but it's frustrating to see that horse 4 or 5 wide on the first turn again. And then you're just like, all right, like really, we're not going to have any kick because you're running behind this slow pace. So it's a frustrating Dania Beach race all around.
So there's a field of 7, 6 rivals for the winner. And you mentioned it was a good effort from Candidate, the horse that won gate to wire, and he definitely kicked down when he asked. Yes, he took advantage of not being pressured, and he was a great horse. That is a good horse moving forward. But here's what's frustrating. Field of 7, 6 rivals. We'll throw out Suzak, the French invader, because he was making his first U.S. start. So are the other 5 horses, and then you include Candidate. So 6 horses. Do you know where Candidate ranked in a time form early pace rating among those 6 rivals?
5th.
6th. He was dead last when it came to time. Well, tied for 5th with Congruent, but still. It's just, and it's not on time form. We love time form. That it's great, and shit just played out differently. That's just racing, but it just was so frustrating that we had everything else completely covered. You had multiple horses with 100 time form plus rating in there, and yeah, it didn't work out for us. But if you did collect on that, congratulations. I was gonna say we should have wheeled back on the pick 4, but I think the pick 4 paid about $47. So it got a little chalky in some spots. Cairo Consort got the win. It wasn't the it's not how you want a heavily bet single to necessarily win, but she got the win. So I guess that's all that matters. Worthington was right there, Rob. It just, yeah.
It was the back off from Worthington that was painful, because you knew around the first turn when Worthington's to the outside and then he backs off by a length. You're like, oh no. Like, because if you're Worthington there, I'd rather go clear and just try and win the race on the front end than taking that, like, hey, let's go too wide and let this horse just do what he wants out front and see what happens. And it was a little bit of a tough trip for Major Dude, who got kind of stuck inside there on the second turn, couldn't quite click clear. But I don't think he had a shot at the winner based on the way that Congruent just opened, or not, that the winner opened up there around the far turn.
Candidate, yeah, you're right. And again, congrats to Arne Delacour. I think the horse has now won. I think he went to Tampa, and I think he won at Laurel. Yeah, so the Laurel Tampa to the Gulfstream Park Turf Stakes win on championship meet, just like you drew it up. It has been a good day over here, though, and let me tell you why. This is the first time since I was hired almost 3 years ago by the Racing Dudes. I'm working from home alone. Celeste, Mrs. Magic, she's had a job since November, working on the Apple Plus show Acapulco. Check it out if you have Apple Plus. They're in an office now. They're going to be in an office for, I don't know, not nearly long enough. I love her to death, but I've had the speakers blasting. I've been doing whatever I want, moving around whenever I want, not worrying about being the background of everybody's Zoom calls. It was, I looked like a complete schlub until 5 minutes before we came on air here. It's been a great day overall. And by the way, the Detroit Lions knocking out the Green Bay Packers last night. That was nice because usually, traditionally, as a Lions fan, it's like, oh, we're into the season. at Green Bay. You can just write down the L, but that was a really great effort there. Overall, real quick before we get into the racing, what do you think about the football action from the NFL?
Little bummed that the 7 seeds are Pittsburgh and Detroit, because I think those two teams would at least be frisky. If you looked at the lines, we got 2 10-plus dogs. Miami going up to Buffalo. I think it's 11. I would bet all the way up to 14. I don't think there's any way Tua ends up playing in that game. Without Tua, that Miami team is in a world of hurt going into Buffalo, a team that they've really struggled with when the games actually matter. They were able to beat them earlier this season, but man, it's tough when Buffalo really tees it up, and there's a tough place to play. And then you've got San Francisco laying 10 flat right now against Seattle. Detroit would have been frisky in the playoffs, at least if they got to face San Francisco. And Pittsburgh has a defense, and Pickett, honestly, one of the bigger surprises for me from the rookie quarterback ranks. Obviously, Purdy way up there as an undefeated record out there for San Francisco so far. But Pickett, I thought, really came around later in the season, started playing some pretty good ball. And Pickens is a heck of a wide receiver for Pittsburgh as well. And obviously, that defense can travel. So I thought that would have been an interesting game for Buffalo.
I normally I'd agree with you, but I did see a play from the Pittsburgh Steelers game where I'm happy that they're not going to play again. They had a sack and they decided to perform a CPR move on the field.
Yeah, that wasn't great.
Yeah. F you. And this is a former Steelers fan saying that I saw that and that was extremely bad taste. But the good news is Hamlin's doing much better. Peyton Hillis, that was a story that kind of got missed a little bit, but sounds like he's doing better. He's already early front runner for Dad of the Year award, so get those bets in early if you can. Peyton Hillis saved his 2 kids from drowning, and then was on life support trying to overcome it. But it sounds like he's doing better. We hope you're doing better. We get to talk about the Derby. You have more thoughts on that? Sorry.
Great, good job of you, Peyton Hillis. Amazing. Glad that he's well. Glad that Hamlin's been released from the hospital as well. That's wonderful news today. I cannot believe that Indianapolis game. I mean, just a wild finish for the number 1 seed, the number 1 draft pick, not the number 1 seed. Houston somehow pulls that out. They try and call their worst possible 2-point conversion play. It still works. They convert a 4th and 20 Hail Mary that should have been batted down and somehow gets into the end zone. And the Bears get to pick first for the first time in it's like 50 some odd years. I would be surprised if they actually pick. If I were the Bears, I would trade Fields and take Bryce Young. I don't think they've got the stones to do it. But that would be my move if I were the Bears there. But I'm guessing they trade down and just get a boatload of draft capital from someone. And ironically, it could be Indianapolis. There's someone that decides to trade up for Bryce Young after costing Houston the number 1 pick by playing atrocious defense on that 4th and 20.
Yeah, Rob's not happy about how that game turned out. It's okay. It's all right. Listen, if I was a Bears fan, I think I would want them to trade down just because I feel like we're a team as much as the Bears have in the last couple of decades. In those high draft picks that haven't panned out for them, maybe trade down because it's a little too like you're going to bomb with the first overall pick. And then the Texans, if you want to be a head coach in the NFL, the Texans are already open. Lovie Smith, speaking of the Bears, there you go. He's gone too. That was pretty quick.
Yeah, probably got fired for winning the game.
Actually,
he was getting fired before the game, but probably didn't help his cause to win that game. Although if you're Houston, you can't walk in there and be like, hey, blow this game. And then the Monday after, like, you're fired. Like, it doesn't work that way because then he'd be like, hey, they told me to blow the game. Would have been a bad look for the Texans, even though everybody knew they should want to lose that game. The ironic part is Indy wanted to lose too. They moved up from like the 6th or 7th pick to the 4th by losing that game. It's the thing that no one talked about is that, hey, both these teams want to lose and one's coached by Jeff Saturday.
Well, the Texans learned from your Miami Dolphins. Lose and then fire him because he's going to be mad and come out and say they told me to do it. Yeah. Lessons learned. We got some more lessons to talk about here that we possibly learned from over the weekend. Derby and Oaks Prep, and then it is the college football championship game tonight. So after the horse racing talk, if you want to stick around and listen, we got a few hours before kickoff, so you can catch Mike and I's thoughts on that. But let's get into it, buddy. Riders up. All right, Mike, the first race we get to talk about, the Jerome Stakes, the first prep of the weekend, the only one on Saturday. If you're watching live on YouTube, thanks for joining us. Going to hit play on the replay here. Lugan Knight, this was Aaron's top pick for the racingdudes.com preview and at youtube.com/racingdudes. So if you check that out, you got a nice price on him. Our boy Arctic Arrogance, he gave, I thought, a decent effort here. It's so many points I thought he was going by. Hell, so did the jockey. You're going to see the look of all looks that just completely wet farts itself here from the 6 in the turn. But overall, your thoughts on this race, Mike?
It wasn't bad, wasn't great. I think that's going to be something of a constant comment for me on these 3 races that we're probably going to look at here. I didn't think we saw the Kentucky Derby winner this weekend. We'll put it that way. Yeah, the Loscano look back around the turn was infuriating because we obviously have this horse in the fantasy draft, Arctic Arrogance, and this was one of the spots where, like, okay, we're going to hopefully win this race, move forward to the New York Preps, win some more. And Loscano made me uber confident on Arctic Arrogance here around the far turn because it looks like he thinks he's got Lugan Knight just absolutely ready to just be collared and just run away from him and never can get by. And this is a concern with Arctic Arrogance now because you kind of have a little bit of the hanger thoughts here when you see this horse because everything else was good here. I thought that the ranging up well here, you can see looks to have a bunch of horse and then just doesn't want to pass Lugan Knight. Now, Lugan Knight also digs in phenomenally well here. So all credit to Lugan Knight in that sense. But not exactly the effort we were looking for. But it'll be interesting to see what happens when this one stretches out. And Linda Rice is just going to run this horse into the ground from a prep perspective. So I'm guessing we're going to see both of these horses on the Derby trail continuing forward here. I don't think either is a real threat long-term. I would say maybe one of the 2 is in the gate. We'll see what happens as they kind of progress. But I don't think these are 2 world beaters. We'll just put it that way.
If of the 2, I think Arctic Arrogance will be the one to make it in the gate. I thought it was funny leading up to the race that Linda Rice was commenting that she thought, or that she said several times that this horse, usually it's hard to keep weight on horses, and this one it's been hard to keep. This is a big old fatty we drafted. I did not realize we got. And if you watch him like in the stretch run when it comes back up here again, you look at him next to Lugan Knight. He's a big old beefy boy. Yeah. I know he's by Frosted. Frosted was best at a mile. He had that really incredible mile win. I think that, going to the 1.8 Withers is the next spot. He's going to move forward to it. I would love to see them add blinkers on this horse. I would love to let's just experiment with blinkers early in the season here, see what happens. Because you're right, he's hung a bit, and then his where was it? Chris Miles says Loscano did this last time on Arctic Arrogance too. He's not going to lose the mount because Linda loves Loscano, and he's one of the best riders. It's that probably Franco right now, but man, it's frustrating when he does that. Out of all sprint races, this is a one-turn mile. Sorry, go ahead.
You're jumping in and out, so I was just going to jump in when it looked like you were cutting out there. Yeah, the look back is frustrating. I'd love to see a new jockey on him. I would also love to see Arctic Arrogance go to the lead if he gets the chance. I would, especially at the 1.8 distance. They went decently quick early here, and Shadi called it out here. Andiamo Alfirenze not going to the front changed this race quite a bit because when we were handicapping it, we were talking about how much speed was in this spot, and it just didn't materialize. You didn't see that speed that we were expecting. It really made it tough for the one horse there, Network Effect, to be able to try and come from off the pace, and it set up well for these 2 horses to just keep on. I think blinkers. I think going to the front would be an interesting move for Arctic Arrogance going longer.
Yeah, the internet's. I didn't realize it was bad. It is raining again pretty hard in LA, so I'll do my best. But you can help carry this out. I think we talked enough about this one. Let's go ahead and I'll pull it up before my internet shits out again. We can watch Reincarnate, the Bob Baffert in the Sham Stakes. What were your thoughts on this one?
How about I pull up the videos since that's juicing out your stream?
Maybe that's what's doing it, or maybe it's the rain.
Yeah, one of the 2. All right, I'll pull it up real quick. The Sham was interesting. Another one where I don't necessarily think that we saw very many good horses come out of this race, and that kind of is one of those themes. National Treasure to me was the headliner in here, and I was not all that impressed with National Treasure in this race. I thought there was a little bit of trouble, obviously, top of the turn for National Treasure, but not enough to really justify the effort that we ended up seeing from National Treasure in this spot. So a little disappointed that it wasn't a better effort there. Reincarnate obviously goes to lead, able to get the job done up front. Just a very odd race. Spun Intended, I don't think ran very well either. I'm going to pull it up here. What were your thoughts here on the Sham? Jesus. And we lost magic again. Anyway, So we'll take a look at the Sham here. And this one, you had one major scratch in here in Speedboat Beach. I think that made a big time difference. Magic, you're back now if you want to comment on the race. Like I said, Reincarnate goes right to the lead. Spun intended on the outside. National Treasure kind of tucks inside here. I'm surprised National Treasure didn't go, but this is one of the problems with having 3 Bafferts. It's tough to necessarily know where each is going to be placed. I think that was one of the problems here. It's one of those spots where like you just use all the Browns, the turf races in New York sometimes. Kind of feels like you might just need to use all the Bafferts in some of these dirt races because we have not seen a single Baffert really step above the rest of them up there in California yet.
Not of the 3-year-olds anyways. We're pretty confident Cave Rock is still his best 3-year-old. Other than about Arabian Night. Those are, I think, his 1-2, 1-1A there. Listen, Reincarnate, this is a horse that I think of these 3 I might like the best just because Baffert going into the race had said this horse just runs all day. And in his previous races, he was kind of a plotter. You look at the splits they're throwing up, 45.5
right.
For him to kick on. We didn't ever see that from him before. Newgate impressed me enough that just because I thought that he was more of a sprinter. I really wasn't sure he'd handle 2 turns this well, and he did it. National Treasure, if he's got the talent of a Baffert horse, he needs to overcome all of the things that are happening. Like right here, the rail opens. Something could have happened for him to try and make a move, and then he just completely flattened in the stretch. You see that it ended up cutting the race cut off there a little bit. We can talk about it real quick. Spun intended he took a weird bad step, and Mike Smith pulled him up. Not life-threatening injury, which is great to hear. I would say he's probably off the Derby trail completely. They'll probably, knowing Mark Glatt, they'll probably give him a lot of time to get better than after that, if he even can continue racing. Paxo Wallop was in this race, and he'd been training well on dirt, and that's all he did done. He didn't end up taking this. So he's going back to turf. How about this? Would you rather have the horses, like the top 3 out of this race, or the top 2 out of the Jerome moving forward on the Derby trail?
I mean, I would take the top 3 out of this race simply because they're Bafferts versus, I realize, like, look, Linda Wright's not exactly known for Derby prowess, right? And when you look at Lugan, that's obviously much better or much more proven connections when you're looking at the Derby trail. I would expect at least one of these 3 is in the gate for the Derby, maybe 2 of them. It will be interesting to see where these horses go. We've heard Arabian Night probably going to be staying in California, so that's probably going to be your horse that's going to be the favorite in the Santa Ynez Derby and major preps like that. Maybe Newgate sticks around. As you mentioned, he's kind of the one who's seemed like more of a sprinter coming into this race, so maybe you keep him here because he's been able to handle 2 turns at Santa Anita. It'd be interesting to see where horses like Reincarnate, where horses like National Treasure end up. I know they've talked a little about Cave Rock being out in Arkansas. I wouldn't be shocked if National Treasure ends up going that path as well, something like that. So we'll see where these go, but I would lean toward taking the 3 Bafferts over the 2 New York horses.
Chris and Rob just put up a comment too. I think we're both great. These were not great horses. And National Treasure was the one we thought could be great out of this. You and I both thought this could be a really strong 3-year-old for Baffert, his 3rd best after Arabian Night and Cave Rock. But Chris says here, none of these horses will change barns just because they're all right. And then he's got them all for the Preakness. He can run in the Preakness. He can't run in the Derby. Naira still has him banned. As long as Churchill has him banned, yeah. Naira's got him banned. So he can't go to the Belmont Stakes. You got a lot of great horses for the Preakness. Newgate, if he changes, Rob says could be a Pat Day mile horse. He'd have to change trainers, but he literally could just change for that race. He wouldn't have to run him in a prep beforehand because it's a Pat Day mile. The biggest shock to me out of this race, 8 of the last 11 runnings, the favorite won. And I think every odds-on favorite of the Sham in that span had won. So for National Treasure to lose at 3-5, we saw Arabian Lion throw up a clunker. National Treasure kind of throws up a clunker. Is what happens with the Baffert 3-year-olds. And it's kind of it's kind of the shitty thing about this is you go, well, which Baffert? If you played just a straight Baffert or a Baffert trifecta box, you did really well. In this race. So
yeah, you get 16 to 1 over 5 to 1 over 3 to 5 on that try, which is pretty sweet considering it's a 6 or 5 horse field. So definitely came in the best possible way there. I agree with Chris's take. National Treasure, I think to me is still the most talented of these 3 horses, is the most likely to end up in a different barn and end up in the Derby. I wouldn't be shocked if, let's say, at least one, maybe two of these three horses win one of the Mid-American Derbies, right? The Indiana Derby, the Penn Derby, the West Virginia Derby, something like that. I mean, these seem like, especially with where Bob is allowed to train and not allowed to train, they seem like a perfect fit for those style of races.
Let's see if my internet will work this time. It wasn't a Derby prep race officially, but there was a really impactful race at Gulfstream on Sunday. Race 9, Rudder's Men, odds-on favorite here to win this race. But you had Mr. Ripple, you had Litigate, you had Talk of the Nation, a lot of good horses, and yet it was none of those ended up winning. It ends up being the Dale Romans horse wins. Mike, that's a normal thing that happens. Cyclone Mischief gets the job done. What'd you think?
Ran off the screen too. I mean, it looked like Litigate was going to run a phenomenal effort on the far turn, and Cyclone Mischief just puts him away. I mean, and you can see when they get next to each other, Cyclone Mischief is a big boy as well. We talked about how big Arctic
Oh my goodness
is. Cyclone Mischief he's filled out for 3. Let's just put it that way. The second quarter was brutal. I mean, they go 23-2 essentially for the first quarter. It pops up here, and I think it's 45-4. Yeah, so 22-2 for that second quarter. Really demanding. You saw Litigate kind of run into it and then go 4 wide. You can see Cyclone Mischief just kind of sit right behind, able to stalk the pace and then pounce and really open up. Ends up getting a 90 buyer for this effort. Really looking forward to playing against this one next time out. Like, I can't wait to. We're going to throw up the Derby odds later. This horse has jumped up all the way to 33-1, which is essentially, top 10 in the Derby future pool right now. No, this is not a top 10 Derby competitor. No thanks, not even a little bit. This race turned out to be a lot worse than I think we all expected, really, is what this horse running off with it tells you.
I thought for sure we'd get one horse coming out of this that would go to the Derby Trail and make some noise. I thought we would probably get 2 or 3. We got one. I was even excited to see, with Litigate, for Todd Pletcher was the other Pletcher in. I'll give Mr. Ripple a little bit of a pass just because he, in a couple of minor issue came up beforehand. So, we'll see what, I know Safi will probably use him next out. Mr. Ripple out of nowhere for third out, it looked like, I don't know if that was so much. I think Litigate just kind of in the towel.
Yeah, they didn't exactly go fast there at the final. I think it was that they went what? I think it was 110 and then 136 for the mile. So 26 seconds there to close out that race. Not exactly flying at the end of that. So not a race that I'm like super excited to have anyone out of. I think, you give Mr. Ripple a shot. I actually think Tail of the Nation, the horse, or Talk of the Nation, the horse on the outside of the 8, you give him a pass as well because he didn't break even a little bit, and Rosario didn't hustle him once he didn't break. So he was just forever back there, never really involved in the race. So it was interesting to see where that horse shows up next time out. I don't think he's a Derby horse, but he's one where I do think you're going to see a little bit of inflated odds versus what I actually think that horse should be next time out because of how poor this race looked. Mr. Ripple, I think that would be one that you could probably say could come back next race and make some noise. Safi's going to have him trained up down there in Florida. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see Mr. Ripple stay on the Florida trail for at least one more race to kind of see, or in the first race, I should say, to see what we can do there and see if we can get some points. Why not take a shot if you're Safi? All right. Excuse me. It looks like Magic has lost us here. He's coming in and out there. It's amazing how rain can affect internet in California. It's like Los Angeles should have better than a lack of rain internet. Throw on the screen here quickly the Derby future odds right now. So this is one thing that we wanted to talk through. It was really interesting to see some of these horses pop up on this list and where they're sitting right now. And you have your obvious favorite in Forte sitting at 15-1, Arabian Night sitting 16-1, Cave Rock there at 20, Faustin 22, Arabian Lion 25, Loggins 25 as well. Been wild to see how some of these odds and numbers have fluctuated in and out already on this year. Forte is an interesting case. He's going to be the favorite until we see him run again. That looks like it's better. Forte is going to be the favorite here until we see him run again, Magic. Although I have no interest in betting him at 15-1. I would rather shoot for horses that are monster prices on here. I think there are a couple that are a little bit interesting.
I didn't want to bring it up just because my internet was so bad, but Trish was talking about so much hate on Cyclone Mischief. Like the horse, love the horse. He's a beautiful looking horse out there. It's his trainer. It's not a question of if, but when is Dale Romans going to screw this horse up? But name me a horse that he hasn't screwed up since Shackelford was in the Kentucky Derby. Like, and he's calling this one of his best ever. The horse is going to the Holy Bull. I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd also love if those owners would give Kelly Von Hemel Cyclone Mischief and let Dale Romans have some of the donkeys that they give to Kelly. And Kelly turns those donkeys into gold sometimes. Anyways, let's take a look at this. Looking at through the list. Oh boy. I don't know. Tappet Shoes at 75-1. That's a Brad Cox horse that's down at Fairgrounds. He looks pretty interesting. He is Cyberknife's half brother, so that's one that I'm interested in. Tappet's Conquest is one that's, I believe, with Todd Pletcher. That one is a very interesting horse to look forward to when he makes his next start. What about you? You said there were a couple that caught your eye.
Well, Tap and Choose is one of the ones at 75-1 that I would be willing to throw a couple bucks on just to see if you can get a much better number than what you'd see in the gate. I went back and watched both the Tap and Choose replays earlier today. Was in the 11 post at Churchill Downs, didn't break great, was dead last in that field first time out over a sloppy track. The horse that ends up winning came from mid-pack. No one really closed from out of the clouds. Made a nice middle move, got up to about fourth or fifth, maybe about sixth or seventh actually, and then got squeezed off in the stretch and re-rallied up to fifth. So I thought it was an interesting debut there with Flo aboard, and it was a classic Flo everywhere ride, right? Comes back, runs at Fairgrounds, and dominates a field that isn't that great, but was wildly green through most of the stretch, just going in and out. So clearly it still has some maturing to do. But once it's straightened out, once Tap and Choose straightened out, did go 6 seconds for that final 16th of a mile, which I thought was pretty impressive after putting up, I think it was a 25 second prior quarter of a mile. So I like the fact that it was able to kind of regain that speed. Never was asked in that maiden breaking effort down there at Fairgrounds. Probably going to be on the Fairgrounds circuit trying to get some points here. So I think Tap and Shoe is a little bit interesting here at 75-1. The other one that jumped out to me, and it's a horse that I didn't love when it actually won its last race, was Instant Coffee. We talked about the prep race a little bit, and specifically the one horse in that race who got a brutal trip. But Instant Coffee here at 66-1, going back and watching that replay again today, was a really rough trip for him. I mean, he was 4 wide on the first turn, 4 wide on the second turn, was close to the pace early, then tucked back, then had to make a move. And the horses behind that horse aren't awful. I mean, I think it was a Giant Mischief, I believe, that was in that one. But someone who was in the Springboard Mile was in that race as well. So it's interesting to see some of the horses that came back out of that one as well to run pretty good. So I think Instant Coffee at 66-1, another Brad Cox trainee, not a terrible place to go here if you're going to try and take a swing this early.
Speaking of Brad Cox horses, he's got a ton of them up here. He's like the new Bob Baffert in the sense that he's got a lot of them. One that I'm interested in had some really slow buyers, but if you're okay with overlooking the slow buyers, Hit Show is 66-1 sitting up there. Won his debut, going 7 furlongs at Keeneland. He's a candy ride horse out of a Tappet mare. Won his third start and got his, that was at Oaklawn. He's going to be based at Oaklawn. So that's an interesting horse. You know, he's probably going to show up in the Southwest Stakes next out. Instant Coffee, he might go to the Lecomte, I think, for the next start for him, which will be at the end of this month. There's a lot of horses coming. I wasn't impressed with Instant Coffee in that for winning that race, but there are a lot of horses coming out of the Kentucky Jockey Club, or that have faced and then lost Instant Coffee that have won and done very well next out. So it's hard for me to really sit here just based off of the class to go against it. I'm trying to look through the rest of this. I'm comparing this with my notes from the Racing Suits fantasy draft here to see what else is good. Classic Legacy is an interesting one. He's a half brother to Art Collector. Bill Mott has him. That's the problem, though, is Bill Mott has him. So, you know, Bill Mott, in the sense that Bill Mott's going to take his time with the horse and not be aggressive. So he probably isn't going to make it to the Derby unless he really just freaks out here. Trying to think, is there a Classical Cat? I don't know if that's correct or if that's supposed to be Classical Catch. And that's Classical Catch is a Todd Pletcher horse that has got plenty of stamina in the pedigree. Broke his maiden at Aqueduct. The Dam was a grade 2 winner. Wrong. So there's some good here. And then as Shadi says, as this always happens, there's some on here. We don't know who the hell we are. I'm sitting here trying to figure out who the hell is Prince of Jericho.
Yeah, Classical Cat is actually a California-based horse. I had to look this one up, who won on the turf last time out.
Oh.
And so it's a horse that they are kind of projecting may switch over toward the dirt.
I know who he is now. He beat Hijazi on debut. I was there for it. he beat Hijazi on the dirt, and then he went to the Del Mar Futurity and got his ass beat. And Hijazi, by the way, is still a maiden. So damn shame. All that money they spent on Hijazi still hasn't turned anything up.
What is he on here? I think he's 100 to 1, something like that. I remember seeing 80 to 1.
80 to 1, yeah.
One interesting one that I think we should at least talk about, because we both were surprised this horse showed up on here. Cage match.
I didn't want to talk about him. We've known about this horse for almost a year.
Almost a year. If you watch the interviews with C2 Racing Stable leading into the Kentucky Derby, I think it was actually the Florida Derby where they mentioned it for the first time. Cage Match is White Abarrio's younger brother, and they bought this horse after they bought White Abarrio and saw how well he ran. He's run back-to-back bullets at Gulfstream Park. I'm shocked he's on this list. Because usually if you see an unraced horse, it's generally a Baffert, and it's generally just one of those wildly hyped horses. I didn't think Cage Match was wildly hyped. So to see Cage Match already hit this board at 50 to 1 was really surprising to me.
No, nobody knew who he was except us and the guy Mark within his brother was C2. They bought him. Didn't they buy the younger Cage Match before White Abarrio had raced? They just saw White Abarrio train and were like, "Shit, give us everything in the family we wanted."
Yep, and he's with Safi down there in Florida. Will be interesting to see when we debut. I mean, like if you're going to be on the Derby trail, you got to start pretty soon here. Obviously, Justify, the only horse not to start at 2 and win a Derby, so trying to be the second one and then comparing yourself to Justify, pretty tough. But I was shocked when I saw Cage Match here at 50 to 1 because I looked the horse up right away. I'm like, why do I know this name? And then obviously everything clicked when I saw the workouts where the horse was. Wouldn't bet it at 50 to 1, but really interesting to find this horse, especially with what I've heard about this horse as well.
Well, and it's not just that he debuts on this list, but he debuts at 50 to 1. I mean, WHNL or WNL, whatever the hell, that's the Remsen Stakes winner. Like that horse is and is going to go back to Aqueduct for big races. Curly Jack is targeting the RZA. There's a lot of good horses that are way behind him that are proven in some sense. And he debuts at 50 to 1. Last horse I'll bring up, Disarm, is on there at 80 to 1. Steve Asmussen horse that actually Kentucky Derby Future Wager Pool 2 was one of the few horses that gained, and he opened at 80 to 1. He closed at 45 to 1. He hasn't run since September. He's been off and he's been hurt, but he got a really nice, impressive win at Saratoga in the maiden special weight. Got an 86 buyer for it. Earlier today, back on the work tab for the Ass Man, and he's down at Fairgrounds. He's a son of gun runner. Disarm, if you're looking for a really big long shot, 80 to 1, I think you can do worse.
And you could watch that preview right here on the Racing Dudes YouTube channel, or that debut race right here on the Racing Dudes channel. I saw that you threw that up earlier today as well. So it's a good timing there, Magic. I don't know if that was planned or not, but good timing there to get Disarm up there. And you can watch his effort at Saratoga, which is phenomenal. One of the better debuts that we saw the entire Saratoga meet. So definitely one that I would at least consider there. And we know Asmussen can get these horses ready and get them rolling, and obviously did well with Gunrunner, and Sons of Gunrunner have been phenomenal. So don't hate that at all. It was interesting to me to see I think it's all 3 of the horses that finished top 3 in the Springboard Mile here, sub 50 to 1 on this board. Wild Atlantic Storm, your winner, I think is 25 to 1. Was it Giant Mischief who ran second, 33 to 1, and Echo again at 50 to 1 here. So interesting to see the Springboard Mile getting that much love.
I think that's just a sign of like it's early January and we have no idea who the hell else to use. I think that's really what that means.
Well, that's why I think that's why I think that there is a little bit of value if you're looking for some of the horses on the bottom of this list and you're trying to find a price, because I agree with you. Wild Atlantic Storm should not be 25 to 1 right now to win the Kentucky Derby. That's wild. It's a fitting name for that horse being sitting there at that price. Same with horses like Giant Mischief. And I mean, Echo again, you could at least make a case for, but I really was not impressed with Echo again in that race, even though I thought that Echo again had the talent going into that race to possibly make the gate. So if you're going to take a shot, I would take a shot with the longest price there versus one of the shorter 2.
I'm trying to count how many Bob Bafferts. There's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 in the top. Sorry, 7 of the top 13 are Bob Baffert. We're using overseas odds here, so you can bet on the Bafferts right now. Yeah, no, and actually, perfect time. Car Ramrod asks, is this pari-mutuel? No, this is if you were. I think I got this from Bovada, but if you were doing any kind of an overseas book that offers it, this is what they're showing. It's usually pretty close, pretty reflective of what Is it Circa? Who does it now in
So
Vegas?
Circa has it up.
Okay.
It used to be Win that was the best one, but right now Circa's the best. You can request horses to be put on the board. They'll generally put them anywhere from 175 to 250 to 1. There's a famous Justify ticket by one of the owners of Slam Dunk Racing that got Justified. I think it was at 250 to 1, won like $40,000 when he won the Derby. Flew out to Vegas the weekend before Justify's debut to get that ticket in at the Win. So Circa is one of the great ones. This one's from Bovada. Bookmaker also generally has up a pretty good Kentucky Derby list as well. So and those are places where I like to go and look at because it gives you an idea of what the books are willing to book the bet at. And it also gives you timing in these where you don't just have to do it on the future Derby pools, right? Where it's also all others. So you're not able to actually like get the horse you want for the price you want. Like one thing we talk about coupled entries. I hate coupled entries because if you like one of the two, you get a lower price because there's this other horse you don't like that you have to bet on. Same thing with the all others. Like I don't really like betting all others, because the price is so depressed in those future pools, but also because I don't want all the others. I would much rather have one or two at 80 to 1, 90 to 1, 60 to 1 than I would have every other horse at 4 to 5 and tie my money up for sub even money for months.
Let's talk about the Kentucky Oaks real quick before we transition over to football. If you want to pull up the Santa Ynez replay, you can. I'm not going to bother because I'm 0 for 2 on that. This was another thing that was frustrating for me this weekend because we've talked about the favorites we tried and successfully beat Saturday in the late pick 5 at Gulfstream. I was so excited to play against Justique in the Santa Ynez Stakes using Ice Dancing, and she was the 5-2 second choice on the morning line. And then John Sheriff just said, I'm going to scratch Justique because she's a little off this week. Ice Dancing ends up being a heavy favorite, and she wins going away. But I was so frustrated that I didn't bet it because I think she was odds on in that spot. It wasn't something I wanted to play. But I guess bigger picture, we talk a lot, and this is a point you love to make, that the 3-year-old fillies, especially on the dirt, really not good in California in the last several years coming out of here. Could Ice Dancing, because she's with Richard Mandela, could this be the one that changes that a little bit? Or are we still going to be looking at, a Hoosier filly, for example, down in Fairgrounds?
Yeah, I would, I would say that this is one of the bigger threats we've seen come from California. One of the things that we've generally seen is that they're Bafferts that are coming, these Baffert fillies that really struggle. And for some reason, Baffert just kind of struggles with these fillies. You have not seen him be a player in the Kentucky Oaks, even though he's been so good in the Kentucky Derby. And to me, this is one of those spots where he had 2 entries here, both the 4 and the 5. The 4 wanting to go to the front, the 5 should just sit off. And Ice Dancing, who went gate to wire last time out, shows this wonderful ability to come from off the pace. And that's what I was most impressed with Ice Dancing here, was the style of race that she ran, where she sits outside, tracks horses, and then just looks dominant, like absolutely push button here around the turn. Just goes right on by these the Bafferts and as well as the 2.
I don't have done this anyway.
So yeah, I mean, like,
go ahead.
I do think Ice Dancing is a legitimate player from what we've seen so far. Obviously, Hoosier Philly is your leading candidate right now for your Kentucky Oaks champion, if anyone's going to do it. But we don't even know if Hoosier Philly is going to end up in the Oaks or the Derby at this point, because there have been rumors that she's going to try the boys. And if she does, we'll see where she ends up. If she doesn't end up in the Oaks, it's wide open. And I don't see why Ice Dancing, especially off this performance, being able to come from off the pace and get it done, isn't a legit threat. You also look at how big she is too. You see her right there next to the 2 Fast and Shiny, and man, she's a very developed filly for this early in her career. So I think this one's interesting. Yeah, the Bafferts were awful. It was, I think who mentioned it, that the Bafferts just looked like terrible on the track. They didn't run well at all. And that's just kind of how Baffert and his fillies have been. So I think it's impressive that Ice Dancing won here. Not sure how much she beats, but I thought it was a very professional effort for a filly that just turned 3.
And she came back from a 2-turn mile route victory, and where she went gate to wire. And that was something I learned from you, is that when they cut back to 7 furlongs going 1 turn, that's a good horse that you want to use, because she's got the speed, but she'd also showed in her earlier races that she wanted to go, that she was a horse that would be able to pass other horses. So I think this was especially of Wheatfield, we have a prospect The internet, it just keeps dying on me. Mike, let's talk about the championship game if we can get out of here.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, we got a fun championship game tonight. Obviously, we got the college football championship, TCU, Georgia. Right now, Georgia laying 13.5, total sitting at 62.5. As you can see, the Magic Mike Show today presented by the over 62.5. That's my bet for the game right now that I put in. Excited. Papa Dude and Aaron will be live for the championship game. So if you want to watch the first half live with them, they'll be there. And I'm planning on jumping on for part, if not all, of the first half to talk football live, talk about live betting, and figure out if we can get any angles there in game. I would lean toward Georgia laying the 13.5. I do think that they're able to pull away from TCU at some point during this game. But I don't really want to lay 13.5 points in the championship game. It's a monster number, the largest ever in BCS history. And to me, it's one of those kind of dog or pass type side plays. If you like Georgia, I'd like Georgia first half -7 more than I do laying the full game 13.5. But to me, the over is the play here. These championship games generally are pretty wild. You're going to get points from both sides. TCU's defense should not be able to stop Georgia. And TCU is one of the top teams in the nation from a big play percentage. So I expect them to be able to break off a couple big plays against Georgia, and that'll help them put on, 14, 21 points on the board. And if they get to 21, this thing's going over 62.
Activity, my OnlyFans page. Listen, it's definitely, I closed that down for the day too, just so that it really affected the internet.
Well, that's what the camera for is in the background, right?
Somebody finally realized that there's a camera sitting here pointing off to the side. You've got it. Yeah. Yeah, that was a good plug for the dudes who bet for tonight. That'll be at 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern. Tune in for that one. I'm hoping my internet's good. We can close this out real quick and get going here. So thanks for joining us. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. I'm at Curtis Kalleward. He's at Somobomb 18, number 1, number 8. Corporate Overlords at Racing_Dudes. Good luck if you're playing the college football game. Until Thursday when we're back for a Pick 5 show, I'm Magic.
And I'm Mike. And an SEC homer, apparently. Something I've never been called before. I'll take it. I bet Ohio State. Whatever. All right. Anyway.
Go Dogs. Have a good night, everybody. See ya.
The Magic Mike Show, where you hear the experts speak. The Magic Mike Show, where you hear the experts speak. The Magic Mike Show. Tune into the show every week. The Magic Mike Show. You can trust the show is the bomb because it's being brought to you by RacingDudes.com.